All right. Hello, everybody. Sound coming through okay? I won't launch into a giant rant before the inevitable G knock on the door telling me that the sound's doubled up. So we'll just see how that goes. Otherwise, I'll turn the webcam off and that should magically fix things as usual. Sure, you don't need to see, what it looks like. You can probably fill in the gaps. Anyway, yeah, I'll let the lag kind of catch up. Bluey indeed. Yes, I'll get into that in a second. Um, no echo this time. Yes. Oh my God, amazing. However, early days yet, and we'll see how it goes. Yeah. As I mentioned in the title of the video or the comment on there, yeah, G's done a lot of magical digital shenanigans to make the sound hopefully sound a little bit better, so it's a little more listen toable. Um, yeah, so just having a look in the old chat here. Suggestion and with this reaction to being offered cheese. Oh yes. Oh yeah, that'd be interesting. Since you have a lot of different kind of avenues to kind of interpret that from different ways. Already got Mordax a list of questions with stream ideas at this end. Yeah, I'll have a little look at that. I got a Nuzlocke one. Cool. Sounds good. Anyway, yeah, so I'll get started on one of those. Let's see. I'll do the Amethyst one just real quick because that's there and I'm really lazy and that's right in front of me. So yeah, let's do it. Anyway, the only reason why I do the little practice couple of minute picture to kind of just warm up a little bit, and the reason why it's Bluey as well at Bluey's style is, of course, yeah, G and I just finally decided to see what it was all about last night and watch a few episodes of it. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, of course we were watching a Saber Spark video about some other things, and he did one about Bluey, kind of talking about how good it was. And, like, being in Australia, we just never stop hearing about it. If you know anyone who has a kid, a toddler or whatever, then they will immediately love it and they'll gushing about it and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so we like finally wanted to have a look and see what the fuss was all about. And yeah, fairly pleasantly surprised by kind of just, yeah, how good it is. How sort of what oh, what is this thing doing? Okay, I lost control for a second. But yeah, it's just a really good, genuine show. Like, yeah, I guess for anyone somehow, I think it's sort of reached its tendrils kind of around the entire world at this point, much like the Wiggles before it. The old Australian kind of contribution to the world as a whole tends to be just children's content. So yeah, from the Wiggles to whatever, this is kind of like the new thing that we sort of launched out there and kind of taken the world by storm, despite being the most Australian thing like you will ever see. Like from just like the few. What am I drawing? I can't draw. Let's fix this. Yeah, I'll just change one. I started with the ear out approach. That was my mistake. Yeah, so people like in an earlier stream talking about, a few things, what Australia's like, what what we sort of really talk like and all that kind of thing. That's pretty much it. Like if you wanted to know what sort of like a modern kind of Australian family typical sort of dialogue is, or what what it sounds like, yeah, forget about like all the kind of stereotypes. If you watch like about 10 minutes of Bluey, you kind of get it, where it's like, as I was saying before, we don't really use a lot of like the typical like slang you might think of. Like very rarely do we say things like struth or cobber or stone the crows or shrimp on the barbie or anything like that. We will say mate and we will say no worries. We'll say those things a lot. And watching Blue for a couple of minutes, yeah, it's very authentic. And yeah, I guess the reason why people sort of latched onto it and it's become so beloved is that it's, yeah, it's really genuine and genuine. It's a very realistic look at it's like a family, and like it doesn't really shy away from some of the stuff that would generally be kind of sanitized by a similar show like that. not the crazy stuff, but like, things that, parents will, you know, play with their kids in a certain way, and a lot of the time it's not really shown in the way that it sort of really is, at least down here. So that's kind of why it's good. Not that I have kids, but my brother does, and yeah, I can kind of see how it would sort of um, capture all sorts of audiences. I'm gonna just restart this entire thing. I apologize. I don't know. I think I've lost the plot. Something's happened to my brain. I usually able to draw and talk at the same time fairly okay, but this time struggling a little bit. So let's just start that again. Maybe it's just because I haven't drawn Amethyst in a really long time, by which I mean like 3 weeks. Yeah, this. All right. Yeah, so yeah, I just thought I'd say, yeah, last night I watched a little bit of Bluey, and yeah, it sort of makes sense to me now why it's kind of taken over. And yeah, just really good little values in sort of to be teaching kids packaged in a fairly in a way that they would understand, and that that parents could use as a resource to kind of reinforce those things when they see it. So yeah, good stuff. Anyway, I'll get a question now. Oh my goodness, what's happened? All right, I'll have a look at that in a second. I'll get a little bit more done on this. So I would say if Amethyst is kind of offered cheese, so the first thing would probably be like, first thing would be to restart this again. The first thing should probably be like, have the immediate knowledge that humans will associate rats and mice with cheese because she's such a fan of human culture, and their perception of kind of like mice in like the zeitgeist of like human experience and influence. So even though cheese actually does sort of feature fairly prominently in their coat of arms, I can't remember exactly what it looks like, but you see it in like some early pages of In Our Shadow, where uh, the the rat sort of coat of arms is like teeth coming down like this, and then sort of like a wheel, like a circle, which is kind of like the wheel of cheese, and some other stuff. You only really see it when Clover goes to Madagascar and plants the flag, and you see it a bit later on when Shawl is addressing the nation for some nefarious gaslighty reason or other, and it's in the background there. But yeah, the rats still do have cheese in their kind of flag, but it's not. Yeah, they probably have forgotten, like most of them culturally, like why that is, and in fact, they probably don't even have cheese anymore because of at least since the shroud went up, and the way that food is produced is like completely different now. Not like what she looked like in like the original couple of pages before it changed. Um, yeah, not sort of starting off on a great foot here. I think I haven't been drawing for a while, so I've kind of lost it. We'll get back into it. Early days yet. So I was thinking about making it just an hour and a half one, but if it takes me an hour to actually remember how to draw, I might spread it out, make it a little longer, so it's not just me constantly restarting the same picture 50,000 times. Yeah, so I guess should be like, maybe there's something wrong with the canvas. It seems a bit weird. Yeah, so she'd probably like first of all be kind of just excited to be witnessing a part of real kind of human culture. I suppose the only ones who would be offering a bit of cheese would be a people, because no one else really except her and Shawl probably would even know that that's something that that would be done. So she'd be like, "Oh, this is that thing that happens in all the human cartoons," and then she'd probably be like, it's a little bit patronizing, a little bit condescending, a little bit kind of old-fashioned, but she probably like just graciously kind of like accept it. So let's do like a little sort of cheek thing. Make that ear a little bigger. Oh yeah, I think I've mentioned this when I tried to draw her before. It's all about like the color and the like the patterns kind of make it, whereas the in black and white, it doesn't look quite like the character, but close enough. Yeah. So hair. This can be pre haircut or very very much post haircut. With that human enhanced kind of hair. That's not an angle. I guess it'd be more like this. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, and have that kind of coming in like this. And there. But yeah, so I apologize for being so sort of inactive. As I mentioned a few places, I have been very busy at work and with some other stuff, and just wanting to do the art like much more than what I've had to do. But yeah, in reporting, and because I've got like 9 different classes this year, I only see the students like once a week, but I've still got to write like the same kind of bigness of report for them all. So even though I'm only 0.6, so I work 3 days out of 5, I've still got 9 different classes to write reports for. And so the reporting time is the only time where I really lament having these like 1 lesson a week classes. Because back when you're doing like science or something like that, where you're seeing the same kids, 4 hours a week instead of 1, you have less reports to write and you know them a lot better, so it's a lot easier. So a lot of me was just like frantically being like, oh, who is any of these kids? I've only seen them like 3 times, and just trying to like extrapolate some sort of something from that. And it takes a long, long time. A lot of marking, a lot of writing, a lot of doing things, a lot of anticipation of parents coming in asking me questions about a kid I've seen 3 times, and I've got like 400 to remember, and them expecting me to know every single thing and trying to bluff my way through it. So I haven't done that part yet, but that's going to be fun. And yeah, so that's my sort of reason for not doing stuff. And thanks for sticking with me through it. I know it's been a couple of weeks since I've had a comic page out, and I only lost like 8% of my supporters during it, which, oh, whatever, that's fine. People have priorities and all that. That's okay. That's fine. So yeah, that I think would be the reaction. I think I'm finally kind of happy with that. Oh, these bits come a little higher. Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit better. Yeah, I've got to stop being pedantic, otherwise the same thing will happen where I've only got like 3 pictures at the end to put up on the thing. So yeah, let's just delete all this. And a cheese. I guess we'd have like, I guess it'd be like the most typical cheese, so that the humans would ensure that Amethyst would know what it is. Like the cheese that looks could be a bit of Swiss cheese, the most shorthand, this is cheese type of cheese. So otherwise, like, this isn't cheese, it doesn't even have any holes in it. So that little SpongeBob speck level of holes, and a ridiculously big piece because it always is. And some sort of human hand here, very condescendingly, even though Amethyst is probably definitely more intelligent than any human that currently is on the Earth. Well, I guess not now, not the current timeline. So then, yeah, so some sort of expression of like, oh, thanks, it's that thing, yeah, that used to happen. That's cool. But yeah, probably also feeling like it's a little bit condescending, a little bit posery to think that that's like, I don't know, something that is a common part of mouse or rat culture. But yeah, there we go. That'll do. So yeah, been offered the cheese. All right, so now to jump back into that maelstrom in the chat that I noticed. Let's see. Heading right back to the top. I won't go backwards in time this time. Goodness me. Okay. Um, okay. Seems to work. Sounds amazing. Good. You already got my stupid. Yep, already read that. Me speaking of stupid, me being stupid. Nuzlocke 1, have you figured anything out about your webtoon creator page and the ability to post messages? I have not had time to have a look at that, but I will in a second. In fact, I should have brought some paper in so I can write that down, but at some point I'll get reminded again and remember again. I bought the iOS books, read through them, and decided to write down some questions you have. Oh, yes. What started off as like 3 bloated to over 30? Okay. That's good. Good that you're thinking about stuff. Bad, probably from my perspective, because that means there was a lot of things that I didn't really explain very well. But I guess that's what happens when you kind of write a story without having the main plot like entirely figured out. You're gonna forget things or whatever. The remaining Strider users from the Generation series wearing Roboman armor, substituting their Strider for more mobility. Okay, yeah, um, Roboman armor. Okay. Reality sucks. Cartoons are safe and pretty. Yes, they are sometimes, unless it's Ren and Stimpy or something like that. I keep hearing about Bluey and how good it is for both kids and their parents. Yeah, I guess it isn't a weird cult or anything. That actually is true. So if you just even just watch it, if the episodes are like 5 minutes long, you just have it on in the background for 5 seconds, and you basically get the gist of why people kind of like it. If you had to take the time to watch it, yeah, as I just said, it takes like 3 minutes. Gonna ruin my Outback Steakhouse mental picture early this time. Yes, as I mentioned a few streams ago, there's no such thing as that. No such thing as a steakhouse. So sorry. Commander Wolf says, I have but a request. Lemurs being dwarves and building deep underground facilities and shelters could do it like an anthill. Oh, thanks, Angel. She brought me a bit of paper so that my caveman brain can record things. So okay, let me just write down Roboman armor, the U, and Strider users. I won't do my usual shorthand of writing it something like Roboman Strider and then being like, what the hell was that about? Lemurs being dwarf, like building deep underground facilities. Oh yeah. So underground facility. I mean that is something that they do have, and in the current comic, we're gonna get there at some point. After we change locations a few times, we'll end up there. Yeah, because there is a lot of underground lemur stuff, which is where all their kind of original cloning that type stuff was for when their society kind of re-emerged when the Twilight Shroud got taken down. My brother has been using a cover a lot since he looked up Australian slang. Yeah, cover's a good one. I feel like cover is a word that you're only allowed to use if you're talking to someone younger than you. It's kind of like it's like bus driver language. Like if you get on a bus when you're a kid, they're like, "Thanks, cover," or yeah. So it sort of is. It's one of those things where it's like Chan or something. It's like it's kind of offensive if you use it to someone older than you. It could be considered to be like a condescension, but it's genuinely used if you're talking about someone like affectionately younger. Have you ever been to the States? No, I would love to, and we're going to be there for a few seconds on the border because we're going to go to Canada soon to see Georgie's brother who lives up there, as half Australians in the world do. And while we're there, we'll go down to Niagara Falls and be kind of on the border. But I do want to look at a lot of stuff. Careful of bumping the mic. Okay, sorry. I will be careful. I think I'm just moving around too much with my nervous energy. Parents need to learn how to talk to kids as much as the kids need to learn. Heard Bluey does that well. Yeah, so much so that there's some parents who kind of feel a little bit threatened by how good the parenting is in Bluey, and they feel like they can't live up to those standards. But it's a cartoon, and like just like the kids are a bit unrealistic, like fairly genuine, but it's like a very idyllic version of a genuine family, I guess. And the same goes for the parents, where they take cues from it, but don't feel like you should be living up to that, I guess. Never knew that was meant to be cheese. Yeah, it is. Oh, that's back to the flag talk. Um, yeah, I was wondering how they get cheese without milk. Yeah, they would have like domesticated cows or something at some point, but probably not anymore. Herd mice like peanut butter. Yeah, I think most animals do. Not that they know how to eat it very well. Their lives are so short, stuff goes into myth awfully quickly, but human archives probably had imagery. Yeah, sure. Now I'm thinking of the Monty Python cheese shop skit. I haven't seen that. I do like Monty Python a lot. Surprising nobody. But yeah, I don't really recall that one super well. What Johan powers does Johan still have? Does he still have dino powers? Is he still a dinosaur? Okay, I'll leave it there. I'll draw one of the things and I will answer that. Okay, so I'll do the Roboman one because that was the first one that was there. And then yeah, I'll get back to some of the ones that were put on Patreon question wise. So this is where I look up Roboman again. Now, are you talking about surely not the Doctor Who Roboman? I do, of course, know about those, but I feel like you're not talking about that. That's what's coming up in my Google search though. So I'll get a bit of clarification on that, and then I'll come back to that. But I'll do the Lima one while that's happening. So this might be a bit much, but we'll see how it goes. So go up here, there.
Read the rest of the chat first.
Okay, I've been told to read the rest of the chat first. Okay, so I'll do that. So I'll just write down Johan Powers, question mark. Are you close to your Patreon target? Well, the Patreon took targets away, so I don't think they have them anymore, but not really. I'm about halfway. So I think my target is, well, a little over halfway. But once I kind of finish up this job, I'll be able to devote a bit more time to kind of seeing if I can entice any new people in. But I think my target was like 800 and it's at like 300 and something now. So it's about halfway. So was there an era you had in mind for Amethyst when she had those cartoons and TV shows she'd watched with Bree? Era I had in mind for Amethyst. Oh, the era of the shows, or the era of when it happened in the story? Because if it's the latter, it would have just been like, a few weeks before they split up. But the TV shows would have been from probably, the 80s and 90s, since she was talking about Secret of Nim specifically at one point. They're probably over all eras, whatever was on the flash drive, bits and pieces of like important animation. Request. Keep coming across a male Gardevoir yelling, "Oh, come on, seriously." Yeah, the curse of his many effeminate dudes. Okay, so Kit male Gardevoir. Okay. So yeah, this is the Matt reads chat portion of the thing. So we'll get into the more dense questions and stuff once I do this. But she's said I'm in suspense over here about what she means about reading the whole chat. So we'll see. Oh, Roboman was the human OC commented a while ago. Oh, okay, right, yeah. I wonder what sort of Australian superheroes there are. Are there any local comic books you read? Okay, Australian superheroes. There are. I'll get into it. And read. I did talk in a previous stream about some of the comics that I read, but local ones. We'll get into it. I wonder if the underground American cheese vaults were the first thing Shaw raided to help feed the rat population. Oh, maybe. Although, I mean, he came along. So before Shaw came along, it was very like the rats weren't particularly that much higher in intelligence than anyone else. He kind of elevated things, but they probably would have raided those, 45,000 years before Shaw came along, I reckon. Now I want to see Kitfox draw superheroes. That can be done. Marvel. Let's hire Kitfox. Let's hire Kitfox. Crimson. DC. No, we'll hire him first. Marvel. No, us. IDW. Fat chance you two. We're hiring him first. Yeah. No, that would definitely not happen. I am not on any sort of level like that. But I will, although when I was reading the IDW Transformers comics, some of them I was like, I reckon I could probably do this. But IDW's lost the rights to Transformers now, so I don't really care anymore. I recall one episode of Bluey was censored over here because it was two dads talking about getting a vasectomy. Yeah, that's what I was talking about, the really like genuine nature, like especially kind of Australian family conversation. Like we'll just talk about that sort of thing all the time. And there's a lot of like sort of fart humor and just like things like that in it that are just like we wouldn't even think twice about censoring that sort of thing, but apparently Disney is not so keen on it. But yeah, there's that, and there's a few other things that was censored. That was thought to be a little bit too risque. But yeah, that's a shame that they do that because that's kind of stuff that's I don't know. At least down here, that's something that would be very reminiscent of what real parents would be talking about in the background. Cybermen. Are the Doctor Who ones? Yes, that's correct. Yeah, they came up with when I typed in Robo Men, even though I knew they were Cybermen. Yeah. Um, love me some Doctor Who. Not recently, but I like the old stuff. Yeah, cool. Cybermen still love the the Cybermen and Daleks come. Reading the rest of the chat now is a good idea. Otherwise, there will be even more when you get back to it. Yeah, indeed. Okay. I just think it would be funny to have such out of context pop culture. Yeah. Cool. All right then. I guess I better look up that commission so I can remember what that looked like. Let's just go to my own page real quick. Kind of feel like when channels like Draw Film Things will to find a picture that they themselves did, they'll just look it up on Google or something because they're so big that it'll just be there and they'll be able to find it quicker than in their own files. Let's see. Oh, I'm not even logged in over here. Still got the same password on here that I had in like 2003 when I started. Good that DA hasn't changed in any way, including their requirement of password length or anything like that. All right, so let's go to me. I guess I'll just look up. Yeah, so let's see. I try not to take too long. I'm like searching through this. I can't remember what it was called, so I'm just gonna go back through some of the. Oh, here we go. It took far less time than I thought it would. All right. Okay. Okay. Strider user than a Robo Man. Okay. So new. Turn off this. All right. So users think I'll draw Novus because I haven't drawn him in 1,000 years. And it always works really well when I suddenly decide to do that. Actually, it's already going all right, better than Amethyst. I don't know what it is about Amethyst. She's just really weird to draw sometimes. So Novus, way back in the Stolen Generation days, back when I was just coming out of the more kind of quad style art that I would do, and then just saw that Deviantart was all about furries, and I was like, oh yeah, I could get massively on board with this, and then changed all the characters into anthros instead, and kind of never looked back from there. And yeah, so the Novus was in that weird sort of awkward time when they didn't really have hair. So at the start of SG, everyone just has like kind of fuzz, like kind of your quad art would generally do. And actually, he kind of just has Fox McCloud patterns. I can't really remember why that is, but he just wait, what did it do from there? I think he just did this. Yeah, he's basically just Fox McCloud, honestly. So that kind of works for sort of a Robo Man kind of thing, I feel like. And I'm astonished he didn't have a mullet. I think he had a little one, maybe sometimes. So let's do a mouth. I think I'm deciding to draw one of these really early characters, because if I screw it up, it doesn't matter, because the art back then was not great. So yeah, it's probably, I know. Oh, if it had been like old style, his eyes would have been like 10 times bigger than that, and his nose would have been like 10 times smaller than that. But yeah, so and his tends to be like fairly like serious about most things, except the things that he's supposed to be serious about, like murder. So yeah, maybe I'll do 2. We'll see how it goes. I'll probably leave it to like the maybe just the portrait bust kind of length, making him look way more buff than he probably should be. Boop. Okay, got a little gem down here. You've got this sort of thing. It's actually kind of a style of armor I tend to do a lot these days, especially with the squirrels, because they have that sort of just BMX kind of off-road biking sort of gear. All right, let's do a question. All right, yeah, Australian superheroes. Well, I guess the main Australian superhero would be Boomerang, who is sometimes he's just in I guess a rogues gallery of DC stuff. Not that I really read too many DC comics, but I guess most famously these days he's in the Suicide Squad, or was for about 10 seconds before he died. And my goodness, he looks like a road rover. If you remember that was a pretty decent show. Actually, we were watching, yes, a bit of Saber Spark stuff last night. We were looking at his series about, oh, he's just a YouTuber, by the way, who like looks at terrible kind of animations and like talks about how bad they are generally. But he was talking about the NFT animations, the Red Ape family, and there was another one called Super Doge, and that actually just looked like a very lame version of Road Rovers, which was one of the in the like the mid-90s. Oh, you might remember it. Kind of cartoon that I used to watch, like a very short-lived Warner Brothers one. Steven Spielberg directed. It was kind of just it's sort of fairly quickly forgotten. It only got one series. It was okay, but I of course really liked it because of the style being sort of and the characters being very similar to the kind of stuff I was drawing at the time. That was good. And I remember I was too embarrassed to watch it. So basically, it's a show about the president, the pets of all the presidents of the world, getting turned into sort of like Kano sapiens, or like a human, like a fairy basically, and with superpowers, and they would be able to, just solve some crimes as their kind of superhero personas. And yeah, that was very much like Super Doge, only a lot better, because it had actual animation and storyline and things like that. But yeah, they kind of looked a lot like this, although the armor wasn't quite as involved. It was just basically like muscles with lines on them to show that it was metal, kind of original Iron Man style. But yeah, good show. So that's Novus with that stuff there. I guess I'll draw Barrett as well. That doesn't make any sense. So yeah, she also doesn't really have like hair as such, but you know she's got that kind of Afghan hound sort of Saluki sort of hair that looks, or ears that just looks like hair. So it's sort of a good cheat. God, what am I doing? Yeah, so Australian superheroes, I guess, yeah, Boomerang. There aren't too many. There's probably others. I'm not, as I sort of mentioned, my my comic knowledge or the comics that I read, you know, when I was a kid were very much just the mainline comics for kids, Spider-Man mainly, and that's about it. Some other kind of Avengers adjacent stuff or whatever I kind of got my hands on. So yeah, I don't know really about that many Australian superheroes besides Boomerang. I'm sure there are quite a lot of others, but their Australianness is kind of incidental. I guess what I would sort of consider to be an Australian superhero would be the Transformer Outback, who was very rarely shown in kind of a few episodes of the G1 show. He just was like pretty interesting. I mean, he was the most typical. He turned into like a Range Rover and just talked in the best, I guess, the best Australian accent that one of the three voice actors could muster, probably Casey Collar or something like that. And yeah, it was okay, but he was pretty good. He's pretty typical Australian, but he also was kind of weirdly smart, like more so than like a lot of the other Autobots. He just sort of come up with some like ideas and just like tricking Decepticons in really interesting ways. He like was, you know, he'd like talk loudly about this like Decepticon detector that he had to sort of flush them out when they were hiding, even though that didn't exist. He just made it all up just to kind of make them show themselves, like little things like that. So yeah, I thought it was fun because normally when Australians are in things, they're just an idiot. They're just like the like comic relief, or they're just a complete moron. I guess because our accent, not always, but generally is, I guess, considered to be not one full of any particular amount of sophistication. Like you're not going to have your super villain unless it's Avatar 2, be an Australian with a very kind of like, you know, white cat stroking Grand Moff Tarkin kind of thing. They're more likely going to be, even if they are a villain, they're going to be a stupid one who's doing something stupid. Much like Avatar 2. Well, he wasn't that stupid. He was pretty stupid. That's fine. So, and I guess we'll put a Strider in the background up here. Oh yeah, and while I'm on this, I guess I'll talk about Johan's powers. So again, this is a comic that newer people might not really know. But oh yeah, and I'll also, you know, chuck it in the chat if you know any other Australian superheroes that I don't know. There's probably a bunch that I've forgotten, or that are Australian, but their Australianness isn't really important. I guess Hugh Jackman is basically an Australian superhero. And yeah, so Industrial Revelations, I've gone through it a couple of times, but a comic I did in about 2010 or something. And there, look at me accidentally drawing the arm type that I just default go to when I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. I don't look like that. Yeah, so Industrial Revelations is a comic about, sort of, it's set in like, you know, 1864. It's about a guy who clearly has superpowers and he's being attacked by ever increasing levels of power of something from his past, and he sort of slowly regains his memory and realizes what's going on, and his involvement in the development of history and certain historical figures. It's kind of like I don't know, fantasy Forrest Gump kind of thing. And yeah, so in that he ends up having he has a lot of powers to start with, and as he kind of regains his memories because he's lost them over the years, he finds out more of the stuff he can do. So it turns out he's like a dinosaur. Spoilers, I guess, doesn't matter. But yeah, so dinosaurs in this universe are, after millions and millions of years of evolution, have become a race that can pretty much do anything. And the only thing that ended up killing them all was the kind of extra dimensional, kind of godlike energy that got trapped in our universe that gives sentience to beings as a way for that energy to interact with the universe we're not supposed to be in. So all the dinosaurs were eventually killed by that, but he was kind of reincarnated by this pod thing that the dinosaurs left, and he has lost most of his old knowledge. But a dinosaur could basically do anything, so they could just use reality. They kind of survive and they subsist. The massive amounts of energy they need to live comes from just directly taking the intermolecular energy between molecules and just leaving things like completely dead and just dust. And so he could do that. He could change anything, but he decided at the end of the comic, because reasons, that he wanted to sort of give up most of his powers, and he kept a few of them. One being his ability to kind of see the future, like slightly into the future, which is one that he shared with the character that he ended up staying with as their partner. The sort of cat god. I don't want to give away too much, but yeah. So he has her power, so we can see slightly into the future. His original power was that he knew how to manipulate gravity and create sort of like the forbidden energy source, which was a combination of nuclear and gravitational power, which sort of ends up being like a kind of perpetual energy kind of thing, because you can use gravity to create nuclear fusion, and then that powers the gravity. It's like kind of bypasses the normal laws of reality, and because of that, that's what powers a lot of the technology in this world. But it also leads to insane levels of mass destruction and whatever. So that was his original power, being able to do that. But he could also go into people's bodies and kind of take over their mind, which he would do with his brother Anubis quite a lot. And he can't do that anymore. He gave that one up. And yeah, he basically had all the powers of all of the gods in the story. So he had perfect knowledge of biology, so he could perfectly know everything about a creature kind of just by looking at them, and just find the best way to kill somebody if he wanted to. He could just manipulate matter by touching it, changing it into other stuff. He lived forever. So he basically kept his future sight. He kept his his knowledge, but pretty much everything apart from that he would have lost, just so he could kind of go through time and know he's not going to screw everything up and lead people down a path of destruction anymore. So those are probably the main two that he has: just everlasting life, good super knowledge, and the ability to sort of slightly see the future. By two, I of course meant three. So yeah, that's some Rubberman stuff. So now I'll quickly do that Lima one, although that seems pretty intensive. So I'll just probably do a fairly basic layout, or I guess a preview of things to come. So a new layer here, and I'll get onto that. While I'm doing that, I will have a look back on Patreon and have a look at some other questions. So yeah, I apologize. I've been a little busy, so I haven't actually looked at these yet, but I will do so now. Okay, I see. Yes, indeed, Mordak, not kidding about many questions. Okay, so I'll just do a few in line, and I'll just kind of go through a few until I finish this one, and then we'll head back into the chat and see what's going on. But yeah, I guess I can draw a superhero as well. Yeah, so the Lima facility. So the surface of Madagascar, anyone who's read In Our Shadow would know, has been completely obliterated by a rat assault, which destroyed the entire surface of the continent or island. And yeah, so top level basically just like volcanic glass, turning kind of the Madagascar island to basalt and obsidian and stuff like that. So underneath the surface, yeah, we'll dig into. So yeah, when monkeys, being the first ones that kind of gained the intelligence from the neural flares left behind by humanity, because they were the first ones to evolve in the human ruins to kind of start using the tools and things we left behind, and using those to take the niche that we had previously taken on the Earth. So once they did that, they found eventually some neural flares, used them, went down the same route of the humans, and put themselves into an artificial reality that could stimulate their now like unquenchable need for like change and challenge. And so they did that, plugged themselves in, but the lemurs, kind of like the adverse humans before them, they didn't really have the mental capability because they were kind of down a little bit rung wise in terms of the intelligence of the other primates. Instead of like linking them into the system, they were just kind of left on the surface in suspended animation in Madagascar underground under a big shield that, much like a lot of the human ruins that were left, were kept there sort of suspended so that at some point they can sort of come back out and take control of the world once the other primates had died. So that happened when the lemur race was re-emerged after Shaw took away the purpose of the Twilight Shroud. The power feeding into the lemur stuff was cut off, and lemurs were free to re-emerge into the outside world and create their society. So lemur society very much based more so on traditional human society from many thousands of years ago, which is why they have sort of weird bits of human slang and language, and their uniforms and vehicles are all very much closer to what we had. And all that stuff had just re-emerged and was only really on the surface for like 40 years, 45 years after Shaw kind of fixed everything, or started his society. And then all that got destroyed when Madagascar became a threat to Shaw's stuff, and he decided to send a fleet over to just casually destroy them because they were a threat, because they had some technology that he couldn't completely control. So he destroyed it all. But under the surface, those same kind of facilities that were left by the primates was still there. And slowly they kind of went back into action, or the remaining lemurs kind of went there and started it all back up. J Runner, Zipsida, Zoom, and Codswallop, the sort of naturalist, they kind of went over there with the other remaining lemurs and started everything up again. So that would all be, I guess, what this is. Sort of like rediscovering some old stuff, a combination of like old and new lemur things kind of building up. So yeah, we'd have, I guess, like the surface sort of bits, which are the more kind of modern lemur stuff, and then underneath that, some more, I guess, school type things, or like a place where they can regain their sort of identity before they kind of get out into the real world, because they would come out of like cloning vats sort of knowing a little bit, sort of like some knowledge that had been stored for them, but they'd sort of need to know kind of what's happening on the surface, and able to sort of reintegrate up there, and probably learning how to do stuff. And also above here, in like a commission I did as well, at some point it showed kind of what they're doing to sort of rebuild their city right now. So they had a lot of kind of construction equipment, rebuilding their cities into the kind of ways that they looked before. A lot of big glass buildings and things like that. So those would be like under construction. but underground things would be a little bit more coming, a lot more vibrant in terms of what's happening, not just building things. So this is all happening up here, and then down underground, we would have some other stuff. So right down the bottom here, we would have the actual kind of old primate facilities. That would be hexagons because sci-fi. But yeah, this is kind of what the inside the Twilight Shroud, up at the top of it, and the pylons, what amethyst and obsidian and Brianna found. So down in here we would have some other stuff. So yeah, up here is the more kind of, before you go to the surface, you need to know all this stuff. You've learned a lot from the pods, but there's more stuff you need to know. So a lot of that kind of thing up here. And then down here we would have some more kind of just that stuff and just huge computer banks like the ones that were seen in the top of the Twilight Shroud, because all this was made by the other primates. So massive quantum computers. We had like this sort of design where everything was kind of sheets of differently shaped metal, like a Charles Babbage difference engine looking thing. So we'll go all like this. So it'd be like these big sort of computers and some more kind of cloning that type business. And yeah, a lot of these computers would be just making the adjustments and, you know, making sure that the correct memories get downloaded and the correct DNA sequences get put into place and all that kind of stuff. Bunch of sort of wires leading up, and then some like intermediary kind of bits down here. Yeah, so wait, stop. This is one of those ones I guess I kind of needed to be describing as I'm doing it. So I couldn't really answer the other question that good. But yeah, so we've got some down here kind of with the emergent stuff, emergent new people kind of ready to kind of take care of them and get them acclimatized to being alive and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, something like this. Not a lot of detail on these lemurs, but get the idea. Pardon me. Yeah, so something like this. But yeah, we're going to be visiting this area pretty soon because things have already pretty much started to go to hell, but they go more to hell than that. So in the comics, so things kind of get even more out of control than they already are, and they end up having to go back to Madagascar for some reasons. And yeah, so we'll get some new characters in there. I'm kind of noticing that the way that things have kind of panned out, there's not like the characters are kind of, yeah, they're sort of split up in weird ways. So yeah, I'll add a few more kind of dynamics in there so things kind of work out. But anyway, this kind of underground lemur facility, ant nest style, yeah, something like this. All right, so I'll get another little thing, possibly one that I don't need to be kind of talking through as I'm doing it, so I can answer some other things. All right, yep. Let me just head back into the old chat. Where was I? Okay, yes. I wonder what the lovable lemurs have been up to since after the shroud. I know some draws and most of the comms. Yeah. It's pretty much canon, yeah, what you commissioned. So, well, mostly. At least the one with every bird in the city. It's basically like that. Lima's favorite thing ever. Nice. Oh, good. They'll be in it again pretty soon. It's Novus, king of the worst relationship ever. Yeah, he's pretty bad. So that, yeah, I was doing SG back when I was a terrible teenager, and yeah, some of it was drawn from real life, some of it was just, yeah, the worst, just trying to make the worst guy ever. Is your reboot going to be not safe for work because the old one, who boy, big cognitive dissonance coming to that after iOS? Yeah, yeah. As I was just saying, I was a different creature back then. The new one, it's probably going to be more violent and more kind of risque than In Our Shadow is, but not to the extent that the original was. I'm going to tone down a lot of the cringe, as I mentioned, and yeah, it's still going to be more edgy, but not as much as it was. Just seeing Rocket Raccoon right now. Oh, and yeah. Um, let's see. Still need to figure out if I should just post the prelude fanfic on DA or somewhere else. I suppose DA is as good as any, although I'm sure my current watchers will be confused as hell. Yeah, well, that's fine. They can do some research or something. Yeah, it's probably good as place as any. Here's another fun request, if you like. Johan copying Anubis's look, hair and tux, turtleneck. Oh, yeah, maybe. I'll think about that. Knowing how many Aussie friends swear he must have had quite. Yes. Quite the home. Yeah. Um, yeah. As I said as well, casual swearing is pretty rife down here. And yeah, I don't like to do it much, but certainly it's not as frowned upon to swear constantly as it is in other parts of the world, and you kind of just got to expect that from a lot of people. Also, this could be a perfect opportunity to make your guys into Australia's superheroes if you'd be set for life. Be sure to have creative control and all the rights. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really done a lot of superhero stuff except for like god based. I mean, they have superhero abilities, but they're not really superheroes. But yeah, maybe. Get some popcorn. The meaning of life panel is coming back for round 2. We're going to be here a while. Yeah. Does Bloke Man count as an Aussie superhero? Bloke Man is the best Aussie superhero. Um, that was from like Comedy Inc., I think, like an Australian like sort of like skit show. And I think if this is the Bloke Man I think you're talking about, he was just like a superhero, except like he whenever anyone asked him to do anything or solve any problems, he would always say it was his day off because Australia is all about our long weekends. And like he was just incredibly lazy, and like anyone ever asked him to do anything, he'd just be like, "Ooh, nah, sorry, can't do it. Oh, I'd love to, but it's my day off." Like that kind of thing. So that was pretty good. He never actually saw what his powers were because he just was always not able to do it because it was his day off. So Ario Speedwagon from JoJo's Bizarre Adventures is technically an Australian superhero. He's from the England, but he says Australian slang. I actually really like Ario Speedwagon, the band. They're such a weird like anti-love ballad band. Like it's all love ballads, but they're all like so tragic, and like the character in all the songs are just so like pathetic. He's always being cheated on, or their relationships ruined because of something, and like I don't know, it's really funny. But oh yeah, it's from England. I guess another Australian superhero is what, Kano? Not He's not a superhero, but in Mortal Kombat. Kano's Australian, although I think he wasn't originally. It's just because there was like a Cockney sort of person doing their voice, and then someone thought it was Australian, so they kind of just went with it, which is cool. He's a d bag, but that's still representation, I guess. Um, England slang is very similar to Aussie, says Zatali. Yes, it is. We kind of just stole a bunch of it. Well, it's not. Yeah, I mean, we're pretty recent country-wise, so a lot of our stuff is very similar to that. If an English criminal says it, Australian probably will say it. Arthur's excuse is he's gone so long without stimulation that he's able to appreciate the little things in life. Yeah, Arthur being the ex flared human sort of rat character that I did the ref of recently. The Twilight Shot has fallen, begun, the clone daycare has, indeed. Funny enough, when I came up with the idea, I forgot about the fact adverse humans wanted to destroy all flared users, so I unintentionally put a giant bullseye on Arthur. He's probably got nothing to worry about. Flared humans can't really do that much. That one was mine rebuilding the city and their navy. Yes, your commission showing what the Lima surface world currently looks like. Indeed, a lot of buildings and everything. Ensuring no genetic degradation occurs, and lemurs make sure that there is more viable genetic samples to prevent such an occurrence. Yeah, that's why I made sure that there was like a fair few lemurs still alive at the end of the first comic, just to make sure that the gene pool isn't too kind of messed up. If you were to rewrite SG and RG, how will they differ from your original story? I've talked about that a few times before, so I'll probably just go back to like a previous one. Probably won't go over that again. Yeah, but major changes in a nutshell. Less cringy, more interesting mech designs based on kind of traditional like Australian art, and being just less insensitive in general to stuff that I have no real right to be talking about in a furry analogy of stuff that really happened. Also, would Sapphire's power be reduced in a reboot? Sapphire is dead. Oh, in a reboot of RG. Probably not. She has to be like unstoppable. She's one of the dinosaurs, for anyone who hasn't read that. Also, so what would the new title of Stolen Restored Generation be? I could come up with a couple of titles if you like. Well, it definitely wouldn't be Stolen Generation. It might be something like, might just be Stolen or something like, back in the day. I'm gonna draw a superhero while I'm gonna draw a superhero. I'll try to remember what Bloke Man looked like. So I'll answer a couple of questions while I'm doing that. So when I was, many years ago, writing that comic, and I had my friend Sarah, who was also doing comics, would have like their comics would always be like one word comics, like the sort of, I guess, kind of what reboot movies and ended up being kind of in more recent times. So it was like, and mine would always be like 2-word titles. So I sort of said what their comic titles would be if I was to do them, and what theirs would be if and the other way around. And yeah, so Stolen Generation, of course, would just be stolen, which at the time was like pretty like pretentious and ridiculous. But I think like at this point, that's probably what it'll be, I reckon. Probably just that. So I know Bloke Man definitely had a mullet. I'm not sure about the rest of the world, but mullets are making a comeback in Australia amongst the, don't want to say less desirable, but certain amongst like certain demographics. Like sort of being a teacher, I kind of see it, and you can sort of tell a student's personality from the length of their mullet, which is kind of unfortunate. But I mean, I myself had one many years ago, so I can't really complain. But because I'll draw a superhero and then I'll draw a real superhero, because he like definitely had the kind of dad bod, like beer gut kind of thing going on, and had a Foster's stubby, I think, most of the time. Oh, that one thing as well in Bluey that I was kind of surprised at is like they'll have barbecues all the time, which actually is an incredibly common Australian thing. We'll have barbecues constantly, like at the drop of the hat for any reason. No shrimps on them, but we will have them. And yeah, just the amount, like Bluey's dad, Bandit, he's just like chugging. He's like got like beers, like just constantly. In one episode, he's like, his beer keeps getting knocked out of his hand for various antics of Bingo, Bluey's younger sister. But yeah, like it's just, I haven't seen like a cartoon for toddlers have such strong representation of alcohol, and so that was sort of surprising. But like again, it's one of those like Australian things where it's like, yeah, of course, every kid's gonna see their dad have like a bunch of beers at a barbecue every weekend. That's just one of those things. So if it wasn't there, it would kind of be weirder. But I can see how that I mean, it probably wasn't censored, but I can see how there might be some censors at Disney being like, "Oh, I don't know if we should show all these dads, just all these parents, kind of just getting hammered, not hammered, but like having a few stubbies and a few cans at a barbecue." Um, yeah, so that was something. But yeah, Bloke Man, pretty great. I probably not even got the right one that G was talking about, but and I think he had like a sort of a superhero sort of like thing, like, but probably just like jeans. I think like he just like couldn't be bothered. But yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think it was something like this, although it's been probably 20 years since I've seen Comedy Inc. Yeah, it says Bloke Man, and yeah, so I'll draw probably next to him. I'll just zoom out a little. Maybe that's why my drawings are so terrible today. I think we just too zoomed in. So let's just get this guy. Oops. Drag him across the other side. And yeah, on the other side, I'll draw Boomerang because he's an Australian superhero. So, oh yeah, let's get an actual question. I'll go to one of Mordak's. So, was adverse considered a slur to the non-flared humans? Did they have a slur for them? Yeah, so adverse is kind of a slur. And sort of not really super mean-spirited. I guess not so much a slur, it's more like a unintentional segregation kind of thing, where it's like that was just kind of, it probably would have sprung up probably originally from like a medical origin where, you know, they were adverse to the procedure and it kind of just got like shortened to that. So probably originally it wasn't, but as time went on, I'd say it was more like, it wasn't so much a slur. Sorry, I'm just looking up Boomerang, and as we found out, I am not able to. Boomerang characteristics. That's not what I wanted. I think I know the characteristics of a boomerang. They're a lie. So, character, thank you. Yes, I can't talk and draw at the same time. No, I can do that. I can't write and draw at the same time. When I had to write the name. Oh, that's right. I forgot how amazing Boomerang's comic book design is. Oh, he's the best. So, all right. I did sort of do some kind of superhero stuff back in the, I guess, the 90s, when sort of me and my friends were really big into them. And I'd do a thing where I was a kid and I think I was making up all these cool superheroes, and the internet wasn't really around back then. So I didn't really have a point of reference to like check up on whether the stuff I was doing was, you know, already done or not. And turns out a lot of the ideas I had were just like the most obvious things, and of course they've already been done. It's like for instance, for quite a while, I thought that I made up like the Mole Man, and I was like, yeah, this is cool. It's like this guy, he's got like drills, and he like lives underground and like and all this stuff. But then I later on found out, much to my chagrin, that no, the Mole Man has only been around for about 50 years and is a very common antagonist. So yeah, things like that would happen. Where yeah, so me and my friend would love sort of, you know, making up superheroes and things. This was kind of like well before, well, not well before, a couple of years before I kind of got into doing the not anthro, the quad kind of comic stuffs that I've talked about before, like the kind of like dog story that was the precursor to all my stuff that I currently do. That still kind of takes that I still take reference and things from. So anyway, back to the question. Yeah, so adverse wasn't really a slang. It was more a kind of a medical term, and probably the flared humans, they sort of Dr. Manhattan did a bit in that once they got flared, they didn't really consider like non-flared people to be on the same level, so they probably wouldn't have even thought to make you know, the idea of slang, or the idea of being condescending or having a thought that they were being like that probably didn't really occur to them. They just sort of kept to themselves. And if the adverse sort of came across, they'd be like, oh yeah, them. Like they probably wouldn't even register them enough in their world to care. But more likely, okay, well I say more likely, but definitely what happened was that the adverse kind of took ownership of the word to be sort of like a reminder of what had happened and sort of how unfair it was that this happened. So they sort of saw it. Yeah, they it's like, yeah, with the adverse, sort of like the forgotten, and this is how they see us as just something different from the norm, and they kind of ran with it, which sort of fed into what happened, where they sort of got very resentful, especially when the Earth kind of started to revert back, because originally the humans would have fixed it. You know, they once they kind of gained knowledge, they would have fixed the environment, fixed everything very quickly because they could control those things very easily. But the machines, you know, keeping the Earth in balance eventually started to break down. And then when the adverse sort of beseeched them for help, they didn't really bother coming out and fixing anything, which led to the Earth getting even more destroyed because the adverse tried to get the flared humans out of their virtual reality, like by force. And that ended up just destroying what was left of the world, which kind of was one of the reasons why they had to leave it until things kind of worked itself out. So yeah, it's more of a grudging thing rather than a slur, something they told to themselves. Anyway, we'll go back to another one and see how we get. Approximately what year did the final version fail? That being the AI kind of metaverse thing that the humans were in. What year did the final version fail, causing the humans to die off? That would have been probably not that long ago, because it's sort of unknown when sort of how long human stuff can last. Certainly like life can't last forever. Like a lot of the human stuff could theoretically last forever, like all the things they left like in their sort of time stasis. But excuse me. But why did I give him a belt? He doesn't have a belt. So human stuff can last forever in like suspended animation, but life can't. So there was like a time limit on the amount of times the humans could keep their original bodies alive, or the sort of sentient versions of themselves that's in their artificial reality, keep that alive. Because even if it's artificial, like I always think it's weird, you know, people who are all about, oh, you know, get a computer brain and you'll last forever, your memories will last for eternity, but they won't. Like if you look at any kind of machine that exists now, you know, we'll all outlive any machine pretty much that we build. And even in the future, when things are different and we've got self-replicating machines, it's not going to be any different to DNA. Things are going to degrade, even if things can get perfectly copied over and over and over again. There's like, you know, data creep, there's things like that. So even the artificial minds of the humans in final version would eventually kind of corrode away or become something unrecognizable. And so it's sort of unclear exactly when that happened, but it was probably about, you know, maybe like 30,000 years for their like artificial like replications of their own minds to for that data to corrode to such a degree that they sort of are no longer themselves. And then at that point, they probably were still like there in some way, but not like as humanity that they remember. And so when the monkeys came along, they were probably like, much like the rats did, although maybe a bit more benevolently, they'll be like, we'll just put these guys out of their misery. So if like, I don't know, yeah, like Arthur, like sort of Mordak's character, if they were to be able to survive up until the present day, at some point they probably would have had to be kept in some sort of stasis or something, so that like that kind of data degradation didn't happen. That's Boomerang, I think. So I guess that's what a villain looks like. I really wish they'd kept that for Suicide Squad. I think that's incredible. So oh no, what am I doing? The boomerangs, they almost literally titular boomerangs. Got to get them on there. And yeah, so let's go for another question while I finish this up, and then we'll get another drawing. Was Universe 26 in the last book just as an AU of lab rat attitudes if they won, or just a place they were hiding? Oh, you mean the Calhoun like social experiment? Oh no, wait. Oh no, that was afterwards. Yeah. Sorry, it's been a while since I wrote it. I'll get back to you on that one. I'll come back to that. I have to remember what I was talking about when I mentioned that. Why would lab rats get bloody noses from reading Shoal's mind, and why could only a few read it? Okay, that makes more sense. So the lab rat mind reading ability is something that was sort of done to them very kind of Secret of Nim style, to like as experiments on human like mind reading capabilities, and it's all kind of based around sound and kind of how that travels, or the electrical signals that not so much sound, more of just the electrical signals given off by the brain when it thinks, and being able to reinterpret that, just like photon signals being reinterpreted as the way we see and things like that. So the way that the mind reading works is it brings in these electrical signals from the brain of the person that they're thinking of, that they want to read the mind of, and that's why the mind reading can even work over like fairly long distances and through electronic devices, because more so through electronic devices, because it's just the same thing. It's the same way that sound is transferred through. But it's not based on hearing. It's more based on like the way other more like sight and like things are interpreted through the brain. So so the reason why the nose is bleeding is because so much kind of information is brought in from a powerful mind like that it causes sort of some ruptures in the brain of these sort of things that have been done to the lab rats in order for them to interpret those electrical signals. If they get overloaded, it can cause things to fire, and it's sort of fairly painful, even though most of them don't really show it. But it the nosebleeds aren't incredibly bad ones. It's just a little bit kind of trickling out from the feedback of the electrical impulses they're trying to read. But that's the reason why they're generally fairly afraid of doing it and don't like doing it, because it sort of does, or there's no confirmed evidence of it, but they get the idea that it's doing permanent damage, because the physical bleeding effect sort of is from some internal bleeding of blood sort of trying to rush to those parts of the brain that to sort of cool down this activity, and that sort of having that sort of trauma in your mind sort of can't be good. So the more electrical signals they're trying to interpret at once, so the same thing would happen if they tried to read more than one mind at once, which they sort of can't really do. And well, they sort of could, but it would do the same thing. So the more intense, and a flared mind is crazy. It's it's sort of off the scale in terms of everything that's happening at once, and the neurons that are connected, it just enhances your memory to insane degrees. So reading that in a non-flared mind, there's so much electrical information to pass that it causes overheating and blood to be brought to the head in order to stop it, and then that causes the nosebleed, because the blood sort of runs out the nose. It would have made more sense for it to come out the eyes, but I don't like that, so I didn't do it. So that's why that is. And so Marble at this point can also read minds with such intensity that she can cause injury to the person's mind that she's reading. So that's sort of why it's kind of happening to other people, what happens to Sage, and his mind actually got damaged by it, to the point where his mind reading no longer works. So that's very recently happened in the comic. Anyway, so done the superheroes, done the Roboman, done the dwarves, done the Gardevoir one. Yeah, okay, cool. So let's get back into them questions, and I'll do the Nuzlocke one. yeah, I feel bad about people who kind of what support me because of the Nuzlocke. I haven't done one in a while, but I do have a pretty solid plan of what the next one's going to be. So it's just a matter of kind of getting time, and I'll have more time when I quit my job, quit my real job. Um, uh, yeah, oh yeah. So and yeah, why could only a few read Shaw's mind? They all technically could try, but yeah, it's just again so much information to pass that before it kind of gets interpreted by their brain, they're, like that part of their brain sort of shuts down and starts like overheating and bleeding, so they can't do it. Was Bray's relationship with Whisper brotherly, familial, or romantic love? All three. So was Shaw's. Oh yeah, let's. I'll do both these at once. So yeah, so Bray has kind of a bit of a chip on his shoulder. He like always wanted to be a kangaroo because it's kind of like in their society, it isn't really said or anything, but like wallabies are kind of considered to be not second class citizens, but certainly like having sort of a lot of the attributes of kangaroos, but not really taking them to like the full extent that they could. So, so yeah, he like always wanted to be one, but he kind of never really, yeah, until he got flared, he didn't really have like the stature or anything like that. So that's sort of, so he was actually pretty happy to be kind of like taken by Lord Brushfire into his family and sort of made sort of like a surrogate, oh, not a surrogate, yeah, a son and an honorary sort of kangaroo. But yeah, so he was never really like put off by that or like annoyed by it or thought it was anything kind of wrong because that's sort of like what he always wanted. And similarly, he kind of saw Whisper originally because he was pretty young when it first happened to him. Both Whisper and he were like, probably only a few months old when they got taken from their like respective tribes when Lord Brushfire kind of combined all the world together. So originally it would have been like a family thing, and he would have been like incredibly stoked to have, you know, an actual kangaroo for a like a quote unquote sister. But yeah, probably, and then but like for sure, as kind of time passed, and you know he grew up a little bit and kind of became aware of like you know different ways you could feel about people. He would have certainly started to see her in like a different light, and but he by the same token he wouldn't have ever thought that he would that it was like his station to kind of like pursue it. So like he probably, yeah, he definitely like respected her a lot and would have if he could have, you know, sort of made it a romantic thing, but he would have never really done so. And she probably would have known like what his feelings were and to some degree kind of like reciprocated them a little bit, but like there wasn't really anything either of them could do about it. Like they're like different species, and even though he wanted to be a kangaroo, he wasn't one. So yeah, certainly like familial. They you know they grew up together. They played little games together. They sort of alluded to that a little bit, although sort of kind of I guess Whisper was doing a little bit manipulatively in just to try to get him to kind of do what she wanted. But certainly it was coming from a place of genuine sort of heartfelt kind of emotion, and that's why like one of her rare kind of emotional outbursts, at least until she goes really crazy, was when kind of Pippa sort of called her out on it, and not realizing kind of how much Bray actually meant to her, and she got kind of really mad about it. But yeah, they were certainly you know as close as family, and you know Bray would have probably taken it further if he could have done, but he you know knew that probably wasn't possible. Was Shaw's relationship with Lena romantic or familial? Well, kind of similar in a way. 1 second while I look up what a God of War looks like. One of those ones I've never had. Uh, yes, astonishingly, I never had one. I would have thought with my not curse, since I like drawing sort of cute style things. I surely would have gotten one. Wait, did I? I may have done. I just never used it because I already had 55 femboys already. But
yeah, so I might have had one, but yeah, it's sort of astonishing that I didn't, if I didn't. But I don't remember. It was a bloody 10. Jesus. I guess like 13 years ago was when I did the first one. Like unreal. So yeah, let's do that guide a while. But yes, Lena and Shaw. So Lena being the lab rat kind of assassin that he was with in his original life as a um, sort of weapons demolition expert. So yeah, Shaw, for anyone who may have forgotten or hasn't read the comic, was originally like quite a small, like unassuming rat where he was just like he was pretty like quiet and he didn't really do much, but he was like a bomb expert. So he got sent back before he became flared, and there was like the rats were kind of struggling. They had some advantages over the other races, but they were kind of losing. I guess they were fighting the raccoons in particular, and the lab rats couldn't really read their minds because of the way the raccoon brain works, how it's very kind of like hand based, and they don't often think about exactly what they're doing, so their minds are hard to read. So they're going in there looking for a underground facility, which turns out to be like an ancient human storage place with a giant robot and some neural flares in there. But yeah, so Lena was kind of his like bodyguard while he was doing his thing, going to destroy this supposed raccoon base. So even at the start, you sort of get the idea that they're pretty close. They sort of talk to each other, and Lena has the kind of lab rat habit of kind of finishing like having a conversation without letting the other person talk because they can already read in their mind what they're going to say. And like it's pretty clear that like at the very least Shawl is used to this and he's seen it a bunch of times and sort of like kind of mentally calls her out on it, even though again he didn't have to say anything. And yeah, so they clearly have worked pretty close together. So I reckon they were probably friends at that point. And yeah, they were just sort of like business partners and but pretty close ones, and they sort of knew each other fairly well. But certainly after that, because Lena kind of stayed with him during all of his like trials and tribulations and taking control of the human technology and then sort of taking control of the world and like the obstacles he had to face in terms of that, even like sort of getting the other lab rats to be on board with it. So through all of that, like they would have become very close, and certainly by the time that she died, like she was definitely the most important thing to him. So much so that after she died was when he really started to kind of like lose interest in anything else he was doing, and life just sort of became a chore, and he just stopped bothering even remembering anything because there's like nothing really mattered. And he always remembered back to her as being something way more important to him than anything else that had come since. And so, yeah, he was at least that important. Probably like romantic as well, but not 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 definite, not in the same way that like a romance would be like in human culture, because it's a little bit different for the animals. Like Amethyst has a pretty like human based like idea of romance and things like that because of everything she's read, and the kangaroos are very much based on the sort of medieval idea of it. But the rats not so much. So like them having like a traditional like romance probably isn't that common in rat society. And he was so, yeah, again, Dr. Manhattan-y about it. He probably didn't even have the capability of having that sort of seeing someone in that way. Like she was the most important thing to him, but not necessarily because of like traditional romantic stuff. So yeah, they probably were very, very close, but maybe not like romantically involved because they definitely didn't have any kids. And yeah, so I'd say like incredibly close, like they're probably not actual romance in the way we would think of it. So I think that's something. Oh yes. And I guess he's got a Pokeball, but I think he's like crushing it in rage. You're not mad enough. That's Kit's resting face. I think he needs to be more mad than this. So let's make these little cheeks up like this, and let's get these eyebrows like way down, and get those pupils borderline non-existent. Oh god, that's so creepy. Sometimes his eyes would be like really weird, so that's fine. Look like a goat. That's okay. Can handle this. And I suppose he's walking through some long grass just for it to be, because that was, back in my day, that was how you caught a Pokemon. Okay. That looks fine. All right. So now I'll go back into some chat. I'll keep answering some of these Mordak questions. At least I know I've got a lot of them to do. Let's see. Read that. A request if possible. Wolf and J Runner possibly at a Lima bar or HQ, looking at the footage coming out of Squirrel Country, either casual conversation or or an expression of consternation, let's say, on their faces. Yeah, okay. Sure. Where did that page go? Technology, where'd it go? There it is. Wolf, J Runner. Or as Australians would say, she's cooked, mate. And screens and Squirrel Land. It's neat. All right, cool. Okay, so yeah, let's just draw that real quick while I do a little other question. So another new picture. All right, so I'm going to try to do this again. So I've drawn Wolf a few times, so shouldn't be too difficult. All right, what else have we got? Are there any other surviving human settlements on the moon, or was the last one blasted at the end of part 1? Ah, that's easy. Yeah, they're all gone. The adverse came and just detected them and destroyed them all. Were the pylons the apes also used by humans, or did they have a different setup for their pods and energy needs? Yeah, so I'll do that one. And what did it exactly mean when J-Runner's eyes became glowing blue dots? Glowing blue due to the constant use of human war machine. Okay, I'll do those two. So yeah, so the human, that's a good question actually. I never really went into that. It wasn't like super important for the story, but the human stuff, like the final version, kind of their artificial thing, and how it differed from the one that the monkeys made, it was pretty different. I mean, you can sort of get an idea of it from kind of the remains of the moon, although the thing on the moon was like a much older, kind of like from back when the neural flare was a very new sort of commodity. That's sort of why it was still being sold in that Babe Learn shop on the moon. So that was like a very early days kind of thing. So the setup when they found the person connected on the moon, that would have been like quite a primitive sort of version of it before things really sort of kicked into gear. And that would have become separated from the rest of the Earth pretty early on. So that's sort of an idea of the sort of thing that it would have looked like. But yeah, a much more kind of beta version of it. So back when people thought, hey, this is a great idea, we'll just start off all our kids with like complete knowledge, and they'll just slowly lose the stuff they don't need and sort of build up their personality afterwards. But yeah, so back in that, there was just a person sitting in a chair in like the typical sort of human suit, which is very similar to what all of them ended up looking like, even the monkey suits. Also, their sort of common pool of knowledge. But yeah, so sitting in a chair, and sort of blue and grey and things like that. So it probably wouldn't have been too dissimilar. In my mind, it was pretty much the same as what the shroud pylons look like. It's not really said or mentioned, and like all traces of it have been lost over time. Over once it stopped having power to it, even after just maybe a couple of 100 years, it probably would have just completely disintegrated into non-existence. But if you look at like a lot of the other human technology, like even like the adverse stuff, even though they're using it, they didn't build it. That would have been stuff that the flared humans made like pretty early on. So it would have been like instead of like the typical green of the monkey stuff, it would have been like more blue and probably a lot more kind of energy based because the humans are all about like if it can be made out of like sort of hard light kind of energy stuff, then you might as well do it. And so you probably would have been like very kind of energy-ish, which, if the power ended up getting cut off, that would have been like one of the big problems of it, because a lot of the infrastructure would have been like built up just out of light. So they probably would have been a bit more in trouble than like the Twilight Shroud managed to hold itself up on its own, even though it was still being supported by like nano machines and things like that. But yeah, sort of imagine what the Twilight Shroud looks like. It probably wasn't like a sort of reverse Dyson sphere like the monkeys made. It wouldn't have been like a big solar panel around the whole Earth, because humans had like different ways of making power. They had like the black leaf trees, or that was kind of something they invented later as a power source that would like never, like a self-perpetuating thing that would never go away, so they could power their ruins and stuff forever. But something like that for their own things would have probably been similar. So probably would have been a lot of like human design looking things, probably like big groups of humans again, like as it was with the monkeys, kind of fairly close together, so they could be near the server, so they didn't have latency or lag or whatever. And probably surrounded by like huge forests of something like the blackleaf trees, although maybe a little more mechanical looking. Well, the blackleaf trees did basically just look like little mini shroud pylons, so probably not too dissimilar from that, but like with big black kind of canopies, but a lot more natural, probably a lot nicer looking, until at least like a lot of that might have been attempted at least to have been damaged by the adverse humans. So yeah, imagine like a big forest of black and white trees, big blue and white buildings in the middle, with a lot of kind of like domey stuff and technology that looks a lot like the human stuff that you see in the comic. Now, why did J. Runner's eyes go blue when she was sort of through the comic? Well, it was sort of a two-part thing. It was just like visual shorthand, I guess, because she already had blue eyes, so it was like a good way to show that she'd been affected by the human control device. So in short, the human control device things that they use all their technology through. So it's like headbands. They have like a direct connection, well, or neck bands, a near direct connection to the soul, not the soul, like your kind of extra dimensional kind of life force energy that hasn't really been. I probably won't go into more detail about like how that works or anything, but that, because of the way it sort of harnesses power from like an extra dimensional source, kind of has effects. So the sort of like the light that holds up a lot of the adverse machinery that is directly brought in from extra dimensional power, and it sort of forms a version of you, like the version of you that exists in this like other dimensional space, which is why when Clover's machine got kind of ripped to pieces, like what was left behind was like just basically herself, and like I guess the sort of the footprint of other rat pilots who have been in there before, because those machines were so old, they've been used for quite a long time, and so the sort of bodies that were the light bodies inside them were a lot more kind of shaped like them. It didn't really happen so much with the other things, but it sort of happened with that. So the so the reason why her eyes kind of went blue is because she was so kind of tapped into that energy source that sort of it uses the brain as a conduit to kind of draw it through. She was constantly bringing that energy through, and it would eventually kind of have permanent change on her body. As well as the eye thing, it also gave her like enhanced, strength and reflexes and other abilities that kind of were important because it meant that she could fight Shaw on a kind of even playing field, or not really. She needed some tricks, but sort of worked out in the end. So yeah, that's why her eyes were glowing. What's next? With Shaw's last words before being cut out that 46 years was too long. That's intentionally left open-ended, so like you can sort of take it either way. Bit of a Inception kind of ending on that one. After the humans destroyed the moon base, how did they know where to meet up for first contact? Just monitoring systems and things, probably. Got pretty advanced stuff. They would have just looked for like population centers or centers of technology and just gone towards that. Did the blast shell fire into the moon only create a crater, or did completely pierce the entire moon? The entire moon goes through to the other side. Some people thought it was a mistake that like the red beam looked like it was coming through the moon, but it actually went all the way through because of the way that the diffusers work. They kind of don't really get stopped by matter that well. They kind of just change it to like a plasma and keep it going through, which is important later in the story. In the one I'm doing at the moment, that'll come back into play. So yeah, that's good. Good reminder. Yeah, those things, the beams basically just go through. They just can't be stopped by anything until their own energy like dissipates. Are there any black squirrels amongst the citizens of the city-state? Mostly brown-red. I didn't know black squirrels were a thing, but sure, there'd be some. Do all lab rats congregate together, or are some out in their own world? Yeah, okay, that's one that might take a little longer to explain. Are lab rats targets for assassination or recruited by factions that still remember the minoring abilities? Yep, so those will be two that I'll do. I'll see if I've got another drawing suggestion. Let's see, done that, done that, done that. Okay, let's head back into chat. Replace alcohol with rum and cola. Oh, so Zatali says pretty much correct, but he has an open flanny over top. Oh wow, okay, that was okay. Yeah, of course he had a flanny. That is a flannel jacket, I guess, like usually like a tartan pattern. I guess, yeah, what we would call a bogan, who's like, I guess, an Australian redneck would wear. This is Bloke Man, by the way. Sorry, got to bail early. Have fun all. Bye. Thanks for sticking by. Probably not there anymore, but yeah, thanks for sticking through that much of my ramblings. Ever think about showing the process of making your comics? Yeah, I'd probably do that on Patreon. Put some the process up there, or maybe in one stream instead of doing this, I'll just do that instead. So the humans had to revisit Earth in order to restock their numbers so that way they don't get gravity problems unless they solve that issue with their tech. Yeah, probably. Yeah, they just wanted to have the world in a better spot. But yeah, that as well. I do wonder if the humans have a colony around somewhere. They have one. In space. Oh yeah, they'd have a bunch in space. I think I've mentioned that before. This probably isn't all the adverse humans that exist. Arthur on a private server working on a personal project. Simply unable to reconnect. Yeah, that sounds right. In terms of how one would last. Make sure to have a spoiler warning on this video. Yeah, okay. Gardevoir, always a solid psychic. Yeah. Lots of black squirrels where I live. Cool. Yeah, no, I've never seen one, so they look pretty rad though. Michigan, not far from Ontario. Cool. Yeah, well, yeah, I said it there. Like, honestly, the only reason I said it in Ontario is because I looked up the place with the most raccoons in it, and that's what came up. So that's why it's set there. Massive amounts of research I do in these things. Yeah, so if anyone's got like another little drawing suggestion, put that down there. While that's happening, I'll just do the Johan with the different hairstyle one real quick. and answer some of the other little questions that are from Patreon. Oh wait, no, I'm still working on this one. What am I freaking doing? All right, yeah. So okay, so this will be like I guess sort of slight spoilers of what they're watching happen. If you're not a patron that is. Out of context, it won't really mean anything, I guess. Oh, it might. I guess you were paying attention to the school that Marble and Seed were attending. So we've got this, we've got some arms. So shortly before the feed dramatically cuts out and they look towards each other. And then it cuts to credits or something. So yes, the things. Let's go. Oh yes. Lab rats congregate together. Yeah, are they targets for assassination? Yeah. So traditionally, the lab rats did congregate together. At the end of the first comic, you sort of see them kind of all in one big room. They sort of stick together because they're sort of like fairly paranoid and they like of each other's abilities, and they want to sort of keep tabs on each other as much as possible because they've all kind of got grand designs of sort of taking over the world and all that, which they never seem to really do because they still have kind of their sort of natural rat-like worries. But yeah, so they tend to like congregate in groups, their little councils, which they kind of go through plan upon plan with each other and sort of go around in circles and like second guess themselves and end up not doing anything because they get like analysis paralysis because they have such a wide amount of information that they can draw from. So yeah, they generally like to think they're in control and they have their little council to discuss matters of the world, but they don't really do much about it. And what do you call it? Storm kind of calls Sage out on that in a minute in the comic or on the most recent page because the lab rats, even though they could do basically anything, they don't generally do it. Sage being an exception and Clover being an exception, and Haylight, but most of them kind of just stick to their own thing and like to think they're in charge without actually doing anything. So yeah, and that's pretty much always been the case. But yeah, I know they hired as assassins and things for other stuff. Probably, yeah. So Sage was still part of like the main group of them, and he only really became kind of like not an assassin, but like an informant or a soldier for hire because he had his own ulterior motive suddenly in getting Marvel back. And that's why he kind of joined up with Soda Light and the other raccoons. So he probably wasn't doing that before then, but certainly other ones did. And yeah, he sort of mentions that when he's sort of skulking around in the Squirrel High Command, saying about how like he had ideas of, you know, the grand stuff that the lab rats used to do, and he was reduced to skulking around and being a spy. When in fact, if he thought about it a bit more, that's kind of what they always were, what they always did. So back in Shaw's day, before he got flared, you know, Lena was just like basically a mercenary, but you know, an assassin mercenary. So certainly when the shroud collapsed, the fear signal disappeared, and all that kind of stuff, they would have, you know, and the world was in turmoil, and it was like everyone for themselves and all that. They would have had no shortage of jobs working for people, even sort of against other rat kind. There would have been a pretty big stigma against that. They would have just been looking out for themselves, taking whatever jobs they could. So yeah, probably about half the lab rats would be employed as mercenaries like Clover was, and just doing that stuff on the side. Do animals have the concept of marriage, union, or do they only refer to their loved ones as their mate? Yeah, kind of. They sort of pair up. They probably wouldn't call it marriage, but certainly the more like the kangaroo civilization and things like that, they definitely have. They may, yeah, again, they may not call it marriage, but they have, you know, groupings for, you know, power and love and other reasons, or, you know, to raise kids or something like that. So they do have it. They wouldn't call it that, but a lot of them do. A lot of them don't, though, probably. The rats don't, generally, Amethyst being the exception. mainly because of how she likes human culture so much. But yeah, some do, some don't, I guess. So, oh yeah, so there's that. They're looking at that on their little screen. I'll do some lines to show that they're not in a white void. Whoops. They're in a tilting room instead. That's better. And there's some things, some little keyboards. Okay, so one more. A little haircut. How many years has it been since the Empire fell in part 2? 6 years. For rodents, would vermin be considered a slur to them? Okay, more on that in a bit. And how advanced is cooking? Okay, that's a good one too. Do animals have tea? What form of energy are most animals using to power homes and vehicles? Okay, that's a cool one to talk about. While I do that, then I'll have a look back in chat and see if there's another drawing suggestion. So this is Johan with the trying out the new hairstyle. So do they have, what sort of level are their meals? First, the slur one. Is vermin a slur? It probably isn't. That's probably a word that most of them have never heard, because I guess the idea of vermin doesn't really mean anything in that world, because like nearly all the animals that evolved after apes were, I guess, the sort of animal that we would, like humans would consider to be vermin. Like, you know, the rats and squirrels, not really vermin, but like that sort of like little scrambly animal that like gets in stuff and like takes human things, you know, like raccoons and all that sort of stuff. So pretty much everything like that has like those little hands that allowed them to evolve. But yeah, so they probably didn't really have that word as something that like really made any sense to them, or the equivalent of that word to describe that sort of animal probably wouldn't be considered to be a slur, or if it is, it isn't one with like very negative connotations. So it'd be like how, I can't really say anything without being all weird about it. But yeah, so it's probably a thing that maybe some would use, or like their equivalent word to it, but it wouldn't be like, oh, there's a rodent or that sort of thing. It would be just like, a thing to call themselves. It wouldn't be a bad word. Yeah, a very human thing. Certainly, like once the humans came back, that might have sort of came back in. But the Roombas very rarely kind of interact with animals, like except for Yash. So the animals mostly wouldn't have heard it. Let's see now. Maybe a bit more domey than that. But, okay, what's next? Do animals have tea? Like the drink? Probably not. How advanced is their cooking? So their cooking's pretty like minimal. They, I guess, like now probably it's become a little bit more diverse, but certainly under the shroud, the main thing that most animals would eat would have been just like the kind of 3D printed meat and stuff. So there probably was a bunch of ways to make that more interesting, but they were fairly limited in like their amount of like spices or their comprehension of ways to make food good. So mostly they might have been like sort of artificially, or part of the like sort of replicator style part of the food that they grew. Part of the growing process might have been like, adding flavors, doing that sort of thing. But like most animals don't actually register the same amount of flavors that a human would. Like I think cats can really only taste like ATP, I think it is, like some sort of fatty molecule that exists in meat and stuff. So like they can't really comprehend most other flavors. So most animals, or a lot of them, wouldn't really care about that too much. It's mainly just like a sustenance sort of thing. There'd be certain things that would be like delicious to them, but like a very narrow range of that. So like their cooking would just be like more of that, please, and then like not much else. But this certainly would like vary from animal to animal. But in general, it wouldn't be as diverse as what like humans have now. So yeah, probably soups, a lot of like protein bar type things that would just be like built by the replicators, or not replicators, 3D printers that they have, and that sort of thing. So yeah, not really to answer that question. What point? Yeah, the energy one. So most animals right now are using the remnants of the Twilight Shroud. This is one of those things that I didn't really explicitly mention, kind of like the communicator. But yeah, it's sort of implied that after the shroud went down, most machines lost all their power. There's no power to run anything, especially like the Striders, which kind of just became houses for people mostly after that, except for a couple that are like kept just in case something terrible happens. And so eventually, after like the fallout and everything went to hell, what people ended up having to do, at least at the start, was to use the sort of the fragments of the shroud, like attach those to their houses. So if you look at like panels of the comic where it shows the squirrel cities, they have like pretty much every house has on top of it, it's like a little piece of like a little shard, and that's kind of like the sort of the solar gathering generator that that powers their house. And this and the raccoons don't really have that. So when it shows their city, they don't have it. So it's partly why they're so poor and have no resources, because they can't power anything, which is why they have to steal some of the Twilight Shroud fragments from the squirrels before they can launch their attack. Sage's help. So yeah, mainly solar power from the Twilight Shroud fragments, although certainly as things move on, they're getting some other different things, like some black leaf stuff. Now that the shroud's gone, more plants can grow, so, you know, using other things, and there's more wind, so wind power and things like that. Yeah, so let's head back into chat. Oh, 5 minutes. Okay, one more. Excuse me. Let's see. I had wondering suggestion at the bottom of my questions. Oh, the ones on there. Okay, yeah, I'll have a look at that. See how fast I can get to the bottom of this. Recreate. Oh, okay, meme. Okay, recreate this meme with Shawl dunking into Arthur's halo. All right, that sounds good. See if I can bust that out in 4 minutes. So, all right, let's do it. So one more panel, one page here. Oh, if we go over a few minutes, that's fine. So, oh, what was the last question? What was that device Tourmaline pulled off Yash and put onto her armor? The animals bathe as often as humans. Were there any other moles? Okay, they'll take us out. They'll take us to the finish line. All right, so that device. So let's draw Arthur real quick. Should be fresh. What happened to my pen? No, only got a few minutes. I've got time for this. Why did it revert to that? Oh, stupid. Why I use real life pens and tablets and stone tablets. So Arthur, yeah, what was the thing that I'll tilt his head up a little on that. The thing that Tourmaline took from Yash's neck. So again, spoilers if you haven't seen the pages of the comic that are on Patreon. But yeah, well, should I? Okay, there's massive spoilers in this one anyway. I'll have to put a spoiler warning up. But basically, Yash ends up getting killed, and Tourmaline, from the front of his armor, takes a little bit, or like that sort of triangular chunk that's on the front of all the kind of rat or human armor. And what that actually is the communicator that they use to communicate with stuff, interspecies wise, and also, well, most species have got their own kind of universal language at this point. But one of the functions of that thing, the reason why it sort of juts out so far, is because it's like a projector that sort of like takes in the face, and it's used to, yeah, originally sort of in human society, it was used to, you know, be a translator between different people, recording facial features to get like the best sort of interpretation of like the nuances of what someone is talking about. So it would sort of like jut out and sort of record your face from like a fairly downward angle, but like, you know, kind of still good enough. And that's especially useful in the animal languages, which use a lot more kind of facial recognition and sort of visual cues to use a lot of their language. So yeah, that was the communicator that Yash was using to be able to talk to everybody. And yeah, so it would need to like record a projection of his face, so it could project that little other face up in the corner whenever he was talking to anybody, and that would kind of yeah be part of his process. So Tourmaline needed that because she needs to be able to talk to Marble, and she knew that when Marble gets flared, the only language that Marble's going to know is human language, because that happens all the time when someone uses a neural flare. So she will only know English or whatever human language it is, whatever futuristic version of sort of some combo human language. So she needs that to be able to talk to Marble. So when she puts it on, it sort of recalibrates and changes its thing. I guess it detects stuff. And now when she uses it, instead of like a little face appearing up in the top, it's a text box. So it does the opposite. It sort of scans her face constantly and uses that to convert it into human language, which she can then sort of project in front of her in like a little text box so Marble can read it. And anyone else, and Yash and stuff. Which is pretty handy because no one else can speak human, so no one else was able to kind of directly talk to Marble and try to like talk her out of what she's doing, sort of like weird defensive fugue state that she's in at the moment. Not a centrifuge state. Oh dear, we're over already. Okay, let's do it real quick. Shawl, doing a dunk. Yeah, we'll go over time a little bit. Ironically, the one. Okay, it's gonna be the best shawl ever. Oh no, I didn't get a dragon thing to do. Oh well, I'll have to do two next time. Oh god, it's the best. It's picture of the drone. So what was I saying? Something? Oh no, doing this. Yeah, so that's what that little device is. Do animals bathe as much as humans? No. So yeah, it kind of mentions how it's kind of not terrible, but like sort of scent is a big part of most sort of animal like conversation and like awareness and sort of sensory kind of knowledge of what's going on. So they don't really see it as something necessarily like bad or something that should be taken out of most situations. They sort of see it as like why did it do that? They sort of see it as something fairly necessary, and if it wasn't there, they'd be losing like a whole part of their sort of culture and communication. So because of that, like yeah, bathing is like they do it a lot, and the animals in real life do it a lot. In either just in dirt or whatever, in water, cats cleaning themselves. But it's not in the sort of like thorough way, the purpose of which is to get rid of all kind of smell. So they sort of keep it there. So like that's just something that they just always have in their society. And it's something that Yash sort of said in his like Willie was like really disgruntled and like kind of annoyed at what was happening, kind of something that he let slip of his disdain. Like normally he was sort of keeping it to himself, like how much he was like disenfranchised by the way the animals treat him and stuff like that. What yeah, I guess his coat would be listed about this way. But yeah, so they do bathe in one way or another. So it's not like disgusting or anything, but there's certainly always like an ever-present sort of like sensory ability to detect that they're there, sort of thing. And yeah, that's just part of their thing, and it's not really ever mentioned by them because it's just something so natural. It'd be like, it'd be like if everyone, I don't know, can't think of an analogy, but like something equivalent to that with like sound. It's like, oh, why are you wearing earplugs all the time? It's like, oh, everything's so noisy. Like it's kind of like that. So like it's something to a certain degree that they'll think about, but not sort of erase completely. So yeah, that's that. And yeah, so that's pretty something. Okay, let's just neaten this up just a tiny bit. Oh God, what is happening? Okay, that you get the idea, I think. Basketball. Watch Haikyuu if you haven't, it's really good. So, yep, that's that. zoom out a little bit. So bad. I might fix this one up a little bit. Why should I care? Yeah, so yeah, thanks everyone for sticking to the end. First one back, and hopefully I'll be able to, now that I'm not quite so busy, be able to do them a little more commonly. I'll just chat one more time. Lim is making a mecha dragon. Okay, I'll officially end it, but no, I'll leave it for next time. Wait, there's a dragon. Just so there's always one here. Okay, I'll see if I can do the Lim mecha dragon one next time. But yeah, so that would take a long time, so I won't do it now. But anyway, thanks so much for joining me. It's been awesome. I love rambling on about stuff, and thanks for putting all your questions, all your things. Sorry if I didn't get to anything, but it means you'll have to come along next time and say it again until I do it. So yes, I'll catch you all next time. Have a good evening or morning or whatever it is. It's like 1:00 p.m. over here. But yeah, and I will see you all next time. What Australians? Oh, cheers.